Hi everyone, it's Emma from Arise, and today I'm joined by Agnes Mitchell, and we're going to be discussing apologetics, logic, and debate. Welcome, Agnes. Um,
Hi.
Hi, can you begin by explaining what apologetics and logic are? I think that a lot of contemporary Christians are not familiar with the term apologetics. It's something that we can associate with kind of highbrow university degrees in theology. Um, and we may have some kind of understanding of what logic is, but may not fully understand it completely.
hmm Yeah, so apologetics is just simply defending the faith. So like defending the faith from common objections, maybe also a bit from like theological error that has been also part of it, but just like it can sort of be philosophical, or it can maybe be more scientific, depending on what sort of objections you're looking at. But yeah, and then logic is basically just learning how to reason and think correctly and clearly, and like how to come to good conclusions in your thinking, and not just like be come to emotional um, decisions or sort of beliefs, but to actually think things through in a proper way.
Yeah. I think I think outside of home schooling circles, I don't hear the word apologetics very much.
Mm.
I think it's something that's really lacking in the modern church. Why are these things important to bring into our homes?
Well, probably for me, like the number one reason I think it's important is that they've done research on kids who have kept their faith into adulthood. And one of the strongest predictors, there's a few different things, but one of the predictors is that they've been exposed to apologetics and sort of worldview analysis. So I think from that point of view, like it's extremely important for Christian parents to expose their kids to good apologetics. And I mean, also, I mean, it's not just that you want your kids to keep their faith, but you want to equip them also to be ambassadors for Christ. And lots of people have a lot of complicated questions that are holding them back from having faith. So if your kids are equipped to speak into those questions, then God can use that. So
I remember when I was a teenager, I went on a missions trip. I was 17. It was not long before I turned 18. I was on a summer missions trip to Vienna with our denomination. And we were just doing, we were doing lots of street evangelism in areas of the city that weren't tourist areas. So we were going to where the locals hung out. And I can remember that we were just walking past a cafe, and I stopped to speak to this man. He was much older than me. He must have been middle aged. And one of the things he started to ask me was about science and faith.
mhm.
And this was a barrier to him, and he was asking all about how does my faith and scientific thought, how do they
Yeah,
kind of come together? So his question was completely rooted in apologetics and everything that you are saying. So yeah, it's what you're saying. To be effective in evangelism,
mhm.
we need our kids to be trained up in these
Yeah.
things.
We've come
How, oh,
across a
sorry.
lot of people who, and it's really sad, who are more intellectual, and they've maybe grown up in Christian families. Um, and they've said they had all these questions as teenagers, and they would go to their pastor, and they would just be told, "Oh, you need to have more faith," or you just got to trust and stuff. And like they there were answers to their questions, but no one was really equipped to deal with them. And so that became, yeah, stumbling block for them. And it's really sad when you come across those people.
Do you think there's a lack of training within church leadership and in pastors now? Or
I think,
does it vary
yeah,
from denomination to denomination?
I think it does vary. Like, I think there's some denominations that are more sort of cerebral and really quite good at tackling those areas. And there's maybe denominations that are more feely. I suppose that's a bit very simplistic way to divide the church, but who maybe are not so concerned. I mean, there's a lot of Christians, they grow up with their faith. They never really feel the need to question a lot of things, and so maybe they don't see the importance. I've never really myself had super huge doubts about my own faith, so I can kind of sympathize. And I just like apologetics because I find it really interesting, but I think maybe in our age in general, we do tend to neglect the mind
Hmm.
um, a bit more and focus on our experiences. And I think especially with teenagers, we sort of maybe try to make everything so fun that we forget that they really are thinking very deeply about
Hmm.
a lot of things and that they are ready for some really meaty stuff.
I think it was Andy Bannister. But I might be
Hmm.
wrong. I remember listening to a podcast not that long ago, and it was talking about the changing face of apologetics. That probably in our generation, you had the rise of the new atheists, like Dawkins, and apologetics was very much looking at those kind of scientific answers to questions about kind of the scientific apologetics side of things. But on so this the research they had done was on university campuses today. The young people aren't so much. They're not really. They're not thinking about that. They're actually not these kind of big origins questions about. It's not a make and break thing for their faith. The
Right.
big issue on university campuses with young people is more cultural apologetics and
Mhm.
about how can a loving God allow such and such, or with gender issues or sexuality, and if God loves, why does He not love? Why does He not let anyone do what they like or live as they like? And so these kind of cultural apologetics issues are really
Mm,
pertinent in our society today. And for our teens, they are coming across these questions over and over and over again. And it is a real challenge to their faith.
yeah.
How do you guys
Yeah.
do this in your own home?
Yeah, and just to speak to that too, I
Okay,
think there
sorry.
is an issue with in the church where we don't really engage our culture as much as we should. I think maybe we kind of run away from it a bit because we just want to focus on God and the Word, and those are obviously right and proper to do. But I think that we do need to grapple with our culture and speak about what's happening in our culture in church and not just like put our heads in the sand.
Mhm.
So I think yes, I think you're right that it is a hugely important thing that we need to actually look at our culture and have answers for teens who are dealing with that stuff in
The thing is,
in their everyday life.
if you think about if you've got a pastor who has been pastoring a church for 20 years and they
Mm,
went through their training all that time ago, the way our culture has changed within those 20 years is absolutely phenomenal. You
hmm.
you would never imagine that we would have such a massive shift that we're now living in an age where if you ask somebody to find what a woman is, they would not be able to. And that to be able to then be able to speak to that more than just, and I don't want to belittle this, but say, well, the Bible says.
Yeah.
And it's just what you said, we often get those kind of answers from what you said previously about how young people would often have these real deep questions, and they would go to the church and the church would say, oh, well, this is, we need more faith, or pray about it, or what does the Bible say? But to be able to take the Bible and speak in a way that's relevant to these issues now, um, is just really important. And we're maybe on the back burner, not being equipped and be equipping ourselves as parents, as maybe leaders, as a more mature believer within our Christian settings, to be able to speak into this effectively, because there's loads of research that would back up a Christian worldview, and
Mm.
would be able to debunk a lot of the stuff that's coming out in our culture to around gender and sexuality, and these issues that are really damaging our young people.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the Bible to be salt and light, right? So we actually need to have an impact on our culture, not just to be in our little bubbles and sort of try and remove ourselves as far as possible. And for a lot of kids, like they are right in the midst of these battles. And, I think we sort of assume that kids growing up in a Christian family are just gonna like accept their parents' values, and yet the values that are surrounding them, like even for our homeschool kids, like the messages they get are so utterly opposed to like their parents' values. And like we have to walk with them through that and help them figure out how to reconcile and how to deal with those discrepancies, or you know it's
And
it's a
even
it's a crazy time to be alive for
it
them.
really
It's
is.
a
And
crazy time to be a teenager.
even within our homes, when we're homeschooling, um, because of the internet and social media, our teens, and we're not, even if you've got really good, strict boundaries and rules, it's pushing and pushing into our homes more and more and more. And as our teens get older, as our teens hit the 16, the 17, 18, 19, they're young adults, we can't have these boundaries where you say, oh no, you're not allowed on Facebook, you're not allowed on Instagram, you're not allowed in internet, because they're about to leave home and they're young adults, and the
Yeah,
boundaries you have for your 13-year-old are not the same as your 17, 18-year-old. And so not equipping them with these skills is not really an option, because they
yeah,
are going to come upon them, and it is going to bombard them. We know
yeah,
ourselves as adults, if you're on the internet, if you're on social media, the cultural message is constantly being rammed down your throat as an adult. And I think it's even worse for teens because of the way the algorithms work. They quickly get
yeah,
that they're young people, and that message is just there all the
yeah,
time.
yeah. It's crazy. Like it's crazy, just like our 13-year-old, the difference between him and well, like her 21-year-old when she was 13. She was a lot like she had never been exposed to a lot of the stuff our
Mhm.
13-year-old has been exposed to. And so it's like we're parenting him a lot differently than we had to. We're having these conversations we can't believe we're even having, like because the things he's hearing about, we don't even know what they mean
Yeah.
because we're too innocent. And it's like, it's like even home when you're home educating your kids, like they just, yeah, you just have to be prepared for the onslaught and not like be embarrassed about anything, because
Mhm.
you want to be able to have them be open with you and it not be awkward, because you don't want them going to their friends and or the internet for information. You want to be able to keep the lines of communication open and make it just normal to have
Mhm.
conversations about anything and
You also
everything.
you also don't want them to get locked into a shame, a sense of internal shame that they're thinking these things, they're feeling these things, or are engaged with some of these things, and they're so feel so ashamed that they can't
Hmm.
come and speak about it, and the truth can't come and minister to them and
Yeah.
bring that freedom because they're bound by the shame that is brought in their life, and of course that's what the devil wants them to be encountering.
Yeah, exactly. It's so tough being a teenager. Like,
It
there's so
really
many
is.
hormones, and your neurotransmitters are going nuts, and you're going through all these growth spurts. And I think you just have to have a lot of grace for them and
Hmm.
um, kind of carry them through a lot of things. 'Cause it is a really tough. It's tough anyway, but it's
Hmm.
particular age. I feel like there's so many added pressures and temptations for them.
Yeah. How do you do all this in your own family? How does this look like practically worked out in your family?
So for us, for apologetics, we have sort of required our kids to read a lot of apologetics books and sort of start like when they're quite young with like stuff like Answers in Genesis and all those dinosaur books. The Ice Age and whatever did that mean and stuff like that. And as they get older, we sort of keep trying to keep challenging them to read more and more challenging books. So like Levi's reading Case for Christ right now,
He's your
and
13-year-old.
yeah, he's 13, and David, my husband, and Andrew just read through a book about art and Christianity, and they've been discussing that. And our older kids, they recently read through a Nancy Piercy
Hmm.
book on the body, which was re it's a really challenging book, but I think because they were doing it together with my husband and discussing it along the way, sort of made it manageable. Like I've tried to read Nancy Piercy, I really like her, but I can only read little bits at a time.
I'm the same. It's like one of these books. It's like you have to
She's so
cross
good.
every sentence. It's so deep,
Yeah,
so
it's
rich. It's
very
like,
good.
wow, I feel not very clever.
Yeah, yeah, she's great. Some really readable apologetics type books are Andy Bannister's. You already mentioned him, but he is a really great writer, and my teens really like his books because he's quite funny,
Mhm.
but there's a lot of great truth in there as well. And so I'm just trying to think. I think we've read three of his books, not together. One of them we listened to in the car together. It's about evangelism. But he's also got sort of an apologetics book. I'm blanking on the name
We'll
of
fight.
that.
We'll remember the name and we'll put the name in the description-y bit.
Okay, awesome.
Um,
Yeah, and so and another thing we do a lot of is just so at dinner time I like so I'm quite good at opening conversations and asking questions. And my husband is really good at sort of analyzing things and answering questions. So we kind of make a good team. So I usually will find topics to talk about, like usually cultural things going on or news things or art. Like we'll look at art and sort of or film. Like we watch movies and then we'll try and sort of dissect the worldviews and messages and stuff in those. Just stuff like that. Like we'll try and watch movies from different time periods and then you you're like, so what do you notice about their values in the 90s that are different from like our values or like even watching older movies, you're like, wow, this is so crazily different in their attitude towards marriage and family and stuff. I'm just trying to like help them see the world they're in a bit better because they're growing up in this, like they don't know anything different.
yeah.
Like we compare it to when we grew up and we're like, whoa, but this is all they've ever known. I think exposing them to older stuff is really important because it helps them give them a sort of point of reference to compare and see that this is actually not normal.
Hmm.
And even looking at other cultures and how their values are different from ours, I think that can be really helpful too.
For families who don't have this in their family culture, where would be a good place to start? Where would be a good inroad that's kind of because we're not all going to sit down and read Nancy Percy. Um,
No, that's yeah, that's my husband is a super geek, so he loves that kind of stuff. So that's his thing. But yeah, I think just every family's different and every family has strengths and weaknesses. So I think like just to think about your own sort of family culture and where that could fit in well. Like if you like movies, but maybe you're not as analytical, there are some really good YouTube videos by Christians that will break down different movies and talk about the worldviews and the messages in them. So, like, if you don't feel really you're equipped to do it yourself, you can just look for some of those and then watch the movie together and then watch the YouTube, or you could watch the YouTube video and sound very knowledgeable. But yeah, I would, and like just there are some great, even on YouTube, there's some great apologetics speakers. And like we'll sometimes at lunchtime we'll just put on one of those YouTube videos and just sit while we're eating and watch one of those together and then maybe discuss it or maybe not.
you did a few cups. I can't remember was it last year or the year before. You led a book club for mums online, the Mama Bear Apologetics, which was great way of being able to equip
Yeah,
parents, obviously it was aimed at mothers, to be able to spot these things that are unbiblical, antichrist within our culture, and how to speak to them effectively and not be scared. Because I think a lot of parents are scared to open
mm,
up these discussions with their teens. Because sometimes, as you've said, as we said a while ago, they know things that we don't even know, and we're it's like, and
what does
not
that
even
mean?
thought of that there's things happening in the world that you can't even conceive that would be a thing, and to opening up this can be very scary. We don't want to open up this can of worms that is, and not be able to speak to or deal with it. So things like those YouTube videos, Mama Bear Apologetics, are great for our equipping as
Yeah,
parents to be able to speak into these places. Yeah.
yeah,
Is
the
there,
Mama,
oh,
sorry.
sorry.
I was just gonna say that Mama Apologetics book is really, really good. I would say that's a real good resource for mums as and she's got a new one out on sexuality as well, but I haven't actually read it yet.
I've not read
But
that one either.
I'm getting it's pretty good.
Um, is there a danger that this can descend into an argument? How can we train our kids to debate, not argue? There ought to be a difference. We sometimes don't see that with our politicians. How can we do that?
That's a good question, and I'm not sure how qualified I am to answer because if you were in one of our dinner discussions, you might be like, it might just feel like a lot of chaos because we are quite a debatey family. Like we like a good debate, and I think for some people that might feel really uncomfortable, but for us, we really like to challenge each other's ideas, and it might seem like an argument, but I feel like there is a line that
Mhm.
we try and keep. So it's okay to argue and debate. It's not okay to be disrespectful or to attack the other person. And if they cross that line, so I give my kids quite a lot of leeway to argue with me because I want to help their thinking. So I do enter into just like debates and arguments with them, but I don't let them be disrespectful. So if I feel like starting to be disrespectful to me, then I'm like, you do not talk to your mother that way. And then, yeah, and I do feel like teenagers are naturally argumentative. Like that's common through history. Like they just reach a stage where they want to argue about things, and I think it's just part of their brain development
Mhm.
where they're starting to figure out that their parents aren't always right and that they want to know what's true and they want to sort of become independent and start thinking independently. So I think you have to have a bit of grace for that, but I think there is a line that you
Mhm.
don't want to let them cross. I don't know, maybe like I don't know if we have found the right path.
Suppose it's like you know your own family. So you
Yeah,
see, if somebody walked in on your family debates, they would think, "Oh my goodness," but
yeah.
it's actually you understand that this is just how you are, and you've got these lines, and everybody understands these lines, and if anyone goes across them, they're kind of shut down.
Mm-hmm.
So that those lines will look different in different families.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's right. I think if you model as well, like having a discussion without getting emotional or like taking it personally or, attacking the other person's character. So you want to engage the ideas without um, attacking the actual person. I think if you can model that for them, then hopefully they'll sort of internalize that.
Because that's obviously one of the things when you talk about logic. Sometimes an argument will be based on the person's character, not actually on what
Yeah, what
you're
they're
saying.
saying. That's such a common thing in social media. It's just a absolute circus when you start reading comments and
Mhm.
it just gets so nasty and you're just like, this is not an adult conversation.
Mhm. So being able to have that modeling in your home of actually this is what an adult conversation looks like, and this is what it
Yeah.
doesn't look like, helps equip them for when they're out in the adult world and having to actually um, argue or debate or be in these difficult discussions with people who may think very differently to them. And for them to be able to be the ones that model grace and model great mercy and do so, show how to oppose somebody's
Mm.
ideas with while still loving them and not attacking them.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
valuable.
That's right. And I think the truth is um like loving people, like that is a I mean, when we're talking about apologetics and logic, we're focused really on the mind,
Mhm.
but we are whole people and like we really do need to like if we're talking thinking about evangelism,
Mhm.
that's a whole different like approach, I think. Like, because you really want to listen to people and make them feel heard and make them feel like you actually care. And that's actually a whole other skill as well that you need to add on to the logic part. And if you have the two together, I think that's good. But I think there probably can be a danger of developing one without the other. But having them both together, that's truth and love. So I think that's really powerful. But yeah.
Mhm. Can you tell us a bit more about the class that you're going to be teaching with Arise after the summer?
Yeah, so what we're doing logic, apologetics, and debate in all one class. So it's going to be quite intense. But I'm really excited about it because it is my area of passion. And so we're going to be working on just a thinking skills, how to evaluate information, how to spot bad thinking or faulty logic. And then we're going to work through I don't know have enough faith to be an ath I don't have enough faith to be an atheist by Frank Turek, which is one of my favorite apologetics books because and it's the reason it's my favorite is because I noticed the biggest difference in my kids after we went through it. Like I noticed that they really um like the concepts really impacted them and they
Mhm.
started to use them a lot in their own conversation. Like when we were talking together, I saw that they'd really like that they'd taken that information into their thinking and
Mhm.
was coming out. Even like if we had non-Christians in the home, they would start spouting off all the stuff from that book in the conversation. I'm like, wow, these are really good tools, like practical tools that they're actually using in their lives.
Mhm.
So like that's why I chose that book in
Mhm.
particular because I noticed the impact it had on our family.
I use it
And
when I'm teaching astronomy for the
oh yeah.
creation apologetics part of it. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I think he just explains things really well and gives illustrations that sort of stick in your mind
Mhm.
that you can pull out when you're having a conversation. And it's quite thorough as well. It goes through
Mhm.
over a lot of ground. And the other, we're also going to be using the Unaborted Socrates, which I really like as well. It was a book that my boys read a couple years ago, my younger two boys. And they just loved it. Like it was one of the books in their curriculum, but they picked it up and they just read it because they were so interested in it.
Mhm.
And I think it's because it's written as a drama and it sort of illustrates the Socratic method in a drama and it's focused on abortion. So like it sort of picks apart the pro-abortion idea
Mhm.
and shows that it's completely illogical to to be like pro-abortion. Um, and it's quite thorough. Like it does it from a number of angles. So yeah. Um, so it's kind of like logic in action with
Yeah.
a specific cultural issue, which I thought was quite helpful.
So the class that you're going to teach has got that is very practical for being able to defend your faith, but also being able to share your faith with other people in
Yeah.
a way which is logical and well thought out, and give those reasons for why you believe what you believe, especially in the culture in which we live in today.
Yeah, we'll definitely be looking at some of the big hot potato social issues and just looking at the reasoning or lack of reasoning that is behind them because a lot of them there are sort of philosophical underpinnings behind them that don't necessarily make any logical sense. So I think it's really good for kids to be aware of that
Mhm. Mhm.
so that they can sort of be inoculated in a way against that.
Fantastic. I'm really looking forward to it. It sounds like just such a great class. You did a mini version of it at our co-op last year, and it was just a really big hit with the kids. They really enjoyed it and got an awful lot out of it. It was great. Um, we're out of time for today. Thank you so much, Agnes. We'll put links in the bottom for Agnes's class, and also the different books that she shared about today. Thank you so much for speaking with us. It's been great to have you, Agnes.
You're welcome. Thank you.